Greetings, I'm Dave Throgmorton, the Director of the Carbon County Higher Education Center. Thank you for joining us for the third of our candidate forums for this year's primary season. First off, I'd like to remind you that the primary election will be held on August 18th. You can still get ballots if you would like to mail in your ballot, and there will be on-site election at the Jeffrey Center, and I think that's the only site at this point in Carbon County on the 18th. We have two candidates for us tonight. These are candidates for Wyoming State House District 15. We have Don Burkhart, Representative Burkhart, who is the current representative for the Wyoming State House District 15. And we have Jacqueline Wells from the Regional Director of Public Health, who is a candidate for the Wyoming State House District seat. The way we're going to run this is each candidate will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Following that, the forum will be open to questions from the public. If you have a question, send it in. Jennifer is over here and she will write it down and we will get it to our guest moderator. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to respond to each question, and then if either of the candidates would like to be able to rebut or have an additional response, there will be an additional response for that. In the event that we don't have enough questions from the public, Carbon County Higher Education Center has prepared some backup questions. You won't like them, so please write your questions in so that we can ask them. I would like to introduce for tonight our guest moderator. The property that Carbon County Higher Education Center bought 7 years ago, the building that we are standing in, that we occupied in 2014, and the road that leads us to this building were all constructed at the time that Mr. Ken Clouda was the mayor of Rawlins. And a great deal of this would not have happened had he not been the mayor of Rawlins. He was a big supporter of this project, and so I'm proud to introduce to you my friend and our former mayor and our guest moderator tonight, Mr. Ken Clouda. Ken, sure show.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be part of this process. You've got to be part of the process, and you've got to be part of the solution. So for these candidates to be here tonight to offer themselves up for questions and to answer the questions that we have, we certainly appreciate it, and I'm ready to start anytime they are.
Okay, it's all you.
Thank you guys for having me. My name is Jacqueline Wells. I'm a lifelong Rawlins resident. I am married to Garrett Wells for 13 years now, and we have 3 boys. Logan's 12, Lucas is 10, and Lane is almost 8. I graduated from Rawlins High School in 2004, and then Western Wyoming Community College in 2008. Went on to get my bachelor's in nursing from the University of Wyoming in 2012 and my master's in nursing in 2015. I have worked for Carbon County Public Health in the state of Wyoming for 10 years now. I've been in public health. I started out as a mom and baby nurse, and then I worked my way up to the manager position of public health, and now I'm a regional nurse supervisor and I cover 5 different counties throughout Wyoming. I have also been on the city council for the past 2 years, the Rawlins City Council. I serve on several local boards and state boards. I've been on the Community Resource Center. I've been the past president. I serve on the local emergency planning committee. I'm the Carbon County Juvenile Justice Board secretary. I serve on a local prevention coalition. I'm the president of the Rawlins swim team. I'm also the past president of the Wyoming Public Health Association, and I'm a member of the Wyoming Medical Strike Team, which is a strike team to help if there is an emergency, get the necessary equipment to whatever county that needs it. I have great leadership skills, communication skills, and relationships throughout Wyoming, and I'm looking forward to serving you if elected.
Go ahead, Don.
Good evening, I'm Don Burkhart, your state representative for Rawlins and Sinclair. I'm married to Mary, my wife. We have 3 children, 4 grandchildren. I have a degree in physics, and I currently, while retired out of the oil and gas industry, work as a management consultant, mostly in Wyoming, but also throughout the western United States. I serve you in the House of Representatives, which is, to me, just my tremendous honor and privilege to do that for you, for all the people. I've been Speaker Pro Tem of the House, which is the second highest ranking position. I'm currently Vice Chair of the Minerals Business and Economic Development Committee. Prior to that, I was on Appropriations Committee where I was Vice Chair. I also serve on the Federal Natural Resources Management Committee, Small Business Assistant Advisory Panel, which advises small businesses on compliance with the Clean Air Act and how they can do it effectively. I'm the House's liaison to the Wyoming retirement system, and that work involves protecting the retirement plans for all the state employees. I represent the state of Wyoming on the Energy Council. I'm on the executive committee of the Energy Council. And in those capacities, one of the recent things that I've done for the entire state is I was one of the main architects for the small business relief program that is out. The governor just recently added $50 million into that program. That's benefited a number of people here. I've also been invited to address the United States Department of Energy on behalf of Wyoming, which I did at the end of last year, resulting in quite a bit of money coming to the state for research. I've also represented Wyoming and the United States on an international committee, including being the United States' voting delegate to that. We've kept the pen in Rawlins. We've provided a lot of money to Rawlins and Sinclair, and I base that on my leadership, integrity, ethics, honesty, and a lot of hard work. Thank you.
Are we ready for the questions? Okay, prior to the coming on the air, we had a very scientific method of coin toss to decide who goes first. Jacqueline won the coin toss, so do you have any questions yet from the public? Okay. Then I'll start with some questions that we have. Jacqueline, what goals do you have or would have as a Wyoming representative that would help our community?
Sure. Some of my biggest goals, I guess, would be to diversify some of the state positions. I've noticed a trend in recent years where a lot of state positions are ending up back in Cheyenne, and I would like to see more state positions back in our communities. I think that keeping some state jobs here in Carbon County helps us as a community. I'd also like to diversify Wyoming. My husband works for the oil and gas industry, so I'm a huge supporter of the oil and gas, but I think we need to look into other options. I think if we build the infrastructure such as things like fiber optics, connectivity, that could help expand our availability to attract different industries to Wyoming. Things like manufacturing, solar power, and wholesale distribution sites would be attractive ways to get more industry into Wyoming. I also am a big proponent of Medicaid expansion. I think that Medicaid expansion would help bring money into Wyoming. I think it helps our citizens. I believe in keeping public lands in public hands. I'm a big advocate for equality and human rights, family, and education.
Don?
Thank you, Ken. Goals, first one right now in the current economic situation would be financial stability for the state and balancing the state's budget. The next few years will be really tough for the state from a financial standpoint, and that would be my top goal. That doesn't necessarily mean making big reductions. It doesn't necessarily mean raising taxes. It means getting stability and balance to that budget. The taxes need to stay low. Now is not the time to be raising taxes. People are really hurting with the current economic situation. For example, in February, we had 33 drilling rigs. We now have none in the state. Each rig is equivalent to 100 jobs. So we need that stability. The other is economic diversification and development, which I've already started. The work with the Department of Energy has resulted in money coming to the state. And mainly that is in the area of STEM businesses, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, coming into the state. In fact, a recent discussion with Vice President with JP Morgan indicated that that's where he felt the state should put some effort, that's where the future will be. So those are the three that I would work on. The STEM one, I've already given a title, I've already had discussions with the governor, and I've started referring it to as PhDs with pickups. These are high-paid, highly educated people that will bring a lot to the state.
Okay, next question. We had a question come in from the public, and I'm going to combine it with a question I have, and Don, I'll start with you. It's going to be a two-part question. So what concrete steps can Wyoming take to encourage its young people, particularly its educated young people, to stay in Wyoming after graduation? And the second part of that is, what steps can we take to encourage our 18-year-old citizens to not only register and vote, but become involved in the process, such as boards and political offices?
Thank you, Ken.
That's a loaded question.
Okay, the first one, concrete steps, go to the businesses and invite them in. I've done that. I talked to a company in California that rebuilds aircraft. They don't like California. I suggested moving here because we have a great facility here, plus open land that they can test fly these planes. And that's just one example. I've started the process of talking to a company to make glass here in Wyoming. Rollins is situated perfectly for that. We have tremendous natural gas reserves, the world's greatest supply of trona. There's a reserve of silica in the state that is pure enough to make silicon chips out of. Those give jobs to our people. Those give high-tech jobs to the graduates so they can stay here. And that. We already have jobs for teachers, for others, for the medical profession, but we need jobs for those who major in engineering, science, and those skills. On the one of 18-year-olds voting, easiest thing is to ask them, to invite them. Drag them with you. You might have to push them, sometimes you might have to drag them, but I think that's one of the easiest ways, and show them the both sides, the benefits and the downside of running for office, serving on boards. It's a lot of time, but it can be super rewarding, and that I found that out personally.
So the first part of that question, keeping our kids in Wyoming, I think first of all it starts at home. You have to teach your kids about the beauty of Wyoming. I got 3 wonderful boys, and I think they could build a life here, and I really want that for all of our children. I think if we diversified, like they said, the state positions, it opens up more jobs for college educated people, as well as trades. Also building the trades as well as education, so it's a twofold system, giving access. I started at the University of Wyoming, I went a semester, and it just didn't work for me. I was homesick, I moved back, I got my college started right here in Rollins, Wyoming, and things like the higher ed really help build that capacity. Also, things like the Hathaway and the Sundance Scholarship are huge for Wyoming residents. We have to keep our kids here, and that is one of the best ways we can do that, is to help them pay for their schooling. The second part, getting them to vote. I am a big proponent of leading by example. That's why I'm here. I'm a young, educated woman, and I really want to be that for the women of our state. And I think leading by example really shows the next generation how important it is to be involved. So.
Okay. Any follow-up? Okay. Jacqueline, let's say that you're in Cheyenne. Let us know your political philosophy would be on how you would decide on which way to vote on a bill.
My political philosophy. I always go back to basic humanity first. So to me, if it's a humanity issue, I'm usually going to side with humanity. So that's probably the core of my belief system. Obviously, I have a lot of values, but I would say humanity is the biggest one. So safety, health, education, anything that is going to better our citizens.
Okay, Tom?
Hey, thanks, Ken. So my philosophy is starts what's best for the people of Rawlins and Sinclair. How will it affect them? How won't it affect them? What will the results be? After that, it's my conscience, based on my experience, knowledge, skills, that I vote. I don't vote a party line. I don't vote a caucus line. I vote my conscience. I listen to what the people have to say. I think about 60% of my legislation has been at the request of people here in Rawlins and Sinclair. So it's my conscience that comes first after considering what the people want.
Okay, this question I think will go to Dawn. Dawn, the governor seems to be determined to purchase property, including mineral rights, from Occidental Petroleum. Do you think this is an appropriate role or purchase for the state? Why or why not?
Thank you, Ken, and I've gotten a lot of questions recently on that issue. Occidental Petroleum came to Wyoming and offered the land exclusively to Wyoming. The legislature authorized the governor to go and pursue that to see what it would cost, what the benefits would be. There was a consultant hired, and I think that's the right way to do it. You have to consider what's there, what you would get for it, what you won't get for it, and what it'll cost you in the future. Managing that much land, and I think there's just under 400,000 acres, is a tremendous cost to the state. So I would look at all the data provided. No decision has been made, but I think it's something worth considering because the royalties that currently go to a private company off of the minerals would come to the state of Wyoming. Plus we get tremendous view shed, tremendous areas of habitat for our wildlife. But managing it is another problem and another issue which we need to address prior to signing any documents. And I don't have a price. So, thank you.
I think I'm siding with Dawn here on having to look at all the data before making a huge decision like that. I think it's kind of horrible timing right now because the state's facing such huge budget crisis. But ultimately, I do want to see public lands in our Wyoming hands, so I'm kind of tied on the issue at the moment. I would have to know more about the whole spectrum of the data.
And this next question will if neither one of you has a rebuttal, the next question will go to you, which is sort of a follow-up in the same vein. What is your view regarding public lands? Should they stay in federal lands, or do you advocate that they be transferred to the state? And what would you do as a legislature to assure that there would be access by the public on those lands for multi-use recreation, hunting, fishing? And that would also go back to the Occidental Petroleum purchase. You know, is there access there too? So.
Obviously, I need to know a little bit more about that, but I think most of us can agree that we want public lands to stay public. I think that's a big Wyoming need, and we love our state because of that. I don't necessarily think Yellowstone needs to be, I think that can be kept federal, but I do believe that a lot of Wyoming's land should be accessible to Wyoming residents.
Okay.
and that includes getting actual access to them.
Don?
Thank you, Ken. The answer to that is a little difficult, because one thing is, we talk a lot about this, but frankly, I don't think the state can afford it. To manage that much land, considering that roughly, I think it's 51%, 40, it does say 50% of the state is owned by the federal government. It's not really public, it actually does belong to the federal government. Plus, Wyoming, in our act of admission, gave up the rights to that land more than 100 years ago. Unless the federal government changed the acts of admission, really, we can't take it. So I think it's kind of a moot point. But I want to maintain the access to that land, and most people don't realize the federal government can shut that off if they want. It doesn't really belong to each of us, and they have done it. I've seen where they've ordered people off the land. So we need to work with them on keeping that land open. With the potential purchase of the Oxy land, and again, that's a big if it ever happens. I don't think that it's gonna be a near-term thing. I think it's gonna take a lot of work. I don't think they'll be handled, and I wouldn't want them handled as what's called state trust lands, the school sections. They have a completely different set of criteria, which is to make money for the state. And that's why they're set aside. So we need to ensure that we keep that access, and I think that could be handled legislatively in how we designate those lands and what we, in effect, order the state to do, the legislature does, orders the state to do in controlling them. I know the talk has already been, we'll keep the grazing leases as they are, if it would ever happen.
Great. We started with Jacqueline, we're gonna stick with, it's Dawn's turn now, and both of you brought this up, so this would be a good time to, in a time of likely budget restraints, where do you think the state of Wyoming can save money? And do you see any opportunities for increasing revenue for the state?
Ken, thank you. Something that is on everybody's mind is the current budget situation with the state. The governor recently ordered cuts of $250 million. That's only the first. I think there'll be more. So we can start in a number of ways. First is, there's a lot of money owed the state that doesn't get collected for a variety of reasons. And I'm talking big money. $84 million sitting out there right now that the state doesn't seem to be able to collect. I think we should make an effort to collect that. We need to look at all of the exemptions we have on taxes. We seem to write tax laws and then give everybody an exemption. And some of the tax exemptions, to me, go to businesses, not to charitable organizations. An organization that works with mental health or developmental disabilities is very different than an organization that has money in the bank, is continually earning money, and that owns property, but pays no taxes on any of that. So I think we need to start getting the money that's already there to be owed. Reductions, currently it'll be each agency, but I think some agencies are able to reduce a little more than others. Some agencies don't have enough people. The only way they can reduce is to lay off staff. And I really don't like to see people unemployed. So that's something that we'll have to strongly consider there. I think we need to look first at needs, not wants, because wants always tend to come up first for some reason and seem to be easier to handle. We need to look at those things the people of the state and the people of this district really need.
Do you mind repeating the first part of
Okay.
that question?
Sure. In a time of likely budget restraints, where do you see the state of Wyoming, where can they save money? And do you see any opportunities for increasing revenue for the state?
Sure, so the first part of that question, I'm actually feeling the effects of those right now as a state employee. And the first thing that we were notified of is the furlough. So we're gonna get 1 day a month for 6 months. But I think we need to focus on the long-term impacts of stabilizing the budget. So during these boom and bust cycles, we're not gonna be having to, do huge cuts in the future. We could just stabilize it. I think there are some areas that we've kind of discovered just recently during the COVID pandemic that people can work from home efficiently and effectively. I know there's been studies through the Department of Health on that. I think that would cut down on a lot of overhead costs out in the communities that have to have offices. It's a potential thing to look at. And then as far as bringing in more revenue, I really believe that if we start the infrastructure to bring in more manufacturing business, wholesale distribution sites, and that to me would have to start with like the fiber optics. If we were to invest into fiber optics and connectivity to the rural communities, I think it would attract way more businesses to the area. So I do know that there's some grant money through the Wyoming Business Council that is working on that as we speak, so.
Okay. As long as we're working through budget and those kind of problems that we're having in the state, and during this time of depleted budgets, and as our energy incomes continue to decline, what are your thoughts on removing the food tax exemption, or an additional sales tax, or a corporate income tax, or any alternatives that you may present?
At this time, I would have to look further into the budget to know what would be needed, but I don't feel like we need to change any of the taxes at this time. I think if we work towards stabilizing the budget, then we wouldn't need to do those things. But I would obviously need to look further into that to know what is needed.
Okay. Don?
Thank you, Ken. Excuse me. With the food tax, I can't support a food tax, just outright. That's a necessity of life, and I can't see taxing it. People need food right now. That tax affects the poor more than it does the better off people, mainly because all of us kind of spend about the same amount for a family. You know what it's gonna cost you to feed yourself and your family. And it's gonna cost everybody, say, who has 3 people in the family, about the same amount of money if you scrimp and save. And I don't think it's really fair to do that at this point in time. I've addressed this issue with county commissioners, with some of the city councils and that, and they all want it. And my answer has been fine. I'd consider voting for it, but you have to give up the supplemental income. And at that point, the discussion ends because they get much more out of the supplemental income than they would out of a food tax. I wouldn't give them both. That's just me. You'll have to live within your means with one or the other. For a corporate income tax, I know we'll look at it again. The legislature will look at it again. And in the past, they've looked at it, and what they've looked at in the past has not been fair. It has literally targeted specific companies. And we don't do things like that in Wyoming. It's fair for all. It's equal for all. And we have to have that approach. And not just because we dislike a certain company or like another company. And we have to watch how that affects businesses in Wyoming. We are one of the few states without a corporate income tax, which I think is fine, but that doesn't necessarily attract companies to the state. If it did, we'd be full of companies.
And an additional sales tax, that would also...
An additional sales tax, a 1% increase, 1 full percent will up to about $120 million on income. So we just cut 250 million. Do the math, that'd be a 2% increase just to keep level. So I think that's something that will probably again be looked at in the coming legislative session. And Ken, I think Jacqueline needs a minute if she wants it. I think I went well over.
I'm okay, thank you,
Don. Then this question will go to Dawn first. Tied to the declining revenue due to decreased oil and gas prices is the number of corporations abandoning their properties and shielding their assets by declaring bankruptcy. Is there a role for the legislature in ensuring that Wyoming does not get taken advantage of under these circumstances?
With the bankruptcies going on, the legislature in the past session addressed that. We had 5 separate bills to address that issue. One being that the mineral companies have to pay their ad valorem tax monthly. We also changed the lien statutes to give the state of Wyoming and thus the communities a priority lien against the taxes owed so that they can't escape taxes. So the legislature's already taken some action in that regard. But to prevent that, I've dealt with a couple companies who have gone bankrupt, have come back out of bankruptcy, have gone back in, sorry to say, and the courts make sure that they pay their taxes. The only problem is right now that a lot of their creditors have a higher lien standing than, or priority than the state does. So that's changed in statutes that, and that went in effect over time. The lien statute is not a popular statute with the banks, I can tell you that, but it's necessary for the state to get its money for the benefit of the people.
Okay, Jacqueline?
I think Don knows way more about that subject than I do, and I think he handled it really, really well. I think it's really unfortunate when we do lose businesses, and it's unfortunate that we have to collect. But it sounds like the legislators are covering that as we speak, so I would have to do more research to know if it's working, but I think that's a good direction.
Okay, Jacqueline, we're gonna come back to you now, and we're gonna kind of switch subjects here. We have a question that came in, so would you support the legalization of marijuana in Wyoming, either recreational or medical? One step, either both or one or the other.
Sure. So I actually have a lot of experience on this subject, been to a lot of summits about this. I do believe that we need more research on the CBD part of marijuana. And that could have some medicinal benefits. I do not support legalization of marijuana recreationally at this time. And that is because I don't think it's well regulated at the moment. I think we need to do a lot more research. I think we need to follow what other states may be doing on the subject. I think the long-term effects of some of the higher potency THCs haven't been studied correctly yet. And that will take time. So at this time I do not support it. Does not mean I won't support it in the future, but I do feel we shouldn't be the experiment states on the subject. I think other states can do the work for us. Medically, I do think there is some good components in the CBD arena, and I think that we need more research on the subject.
Don?
Ken? From my own standpoint, I'd like to see the federal government remove the restrictions on doing research on it. We do need to understand from a medical standpoint what it will and will not do. I've talked to a number of people on both sides. I've talked to growers in Colorado, and it makes a lot of money for Colorado. But we really don't have a good study. We spend years putting a new pain medication on the market with studies, and overnight people want us to legalize something that at one time was legal, was made illegal, and now they want it legalized again. So from a medical standpoint, we need to understand really the effects of it. And I'll go back to what a friend who has a child with developmental disabilities and the child has seizures said to me once, which was, if I really felt it was worthwhile, I would do it regardless of what the law is. That's my child. And I think that's a good point. And this is a very knowledgeable person who really hasn't come down on the side, and a person I value his judgment. From the recreational side, at this time, I don't support it. There's too much evidence that it does too much wrong. It brings the wrong people in, the wrong signal. Colorado has a tremendous problem with organized crime laundering money because you don't know what is coming in with it. And that's one of the great downsides of it. I've talked to people in Colorado, I've talked to a number of their legislators, and they all tell me the same thing. Do not do this in Wyoming. So that would be my position on it.
Can I add one
Yes.
thing?
Sure.
I also feel like we need a really good roadside test to be able to make sure that the police have the tools to be able to do their job properly, to make sure that people are not driving impaired. And with that, I think I've been to a lot of sessions on this, but one of the things that I thought was fascinating was when they legalized it in Colorado, one of the biggest things that they realized was they had to retrain all of their drug dogs across the state. And so those drug dogs were always trained to smell marijuana. So that was a huge expense they didn't even think about. So I think we need to look at the whole picture. I just don't think we're ready for it at this time.
Okay. We'll go back to Don for the next question. Would you support the expansion of Medicaid in Wyoming? Why or why not?
Again, at this time, I wouldn't, for a number of reasons. We've looked at this in the past, the legislature has. It'll take insurance away from 8,000 people at least who currently have insurance and force them on to Medicaid. While there's a 90-10 split with the federal government, there's no guarantee that would ever stay the way it is. And right now, I don't think the state has the 10% to put in there. So I can't support Medicaid expansion at this time.
I already mentioned that I am a big proponent of Medicaid expansion. I think it's huge for Wyoming citizens. We're one of the last states that haven't done it. I think that it'll only bring big benefits to the state of Wyoming. I think it's an equality issue. I think it's a human rights issue. I absolutely support it.
Okay. Let's see, this would be Jackie's question. Jacqueline, I'm sorry. What are your thoughts on making I-80 a toll road? And there was just recently an article that there was some consideration of, I believe, suspending the fuel tax and putting in a use tax, if I read the article correctly. Any thoughts on that?
And again, I would have to do way more research, but I am not for that at this moment. I think it could stunt our travel. I think it could stunt our tourism. The people that live in the rural communities that need to get to work, I think it could greatly impact them. You know, we have a lot of population that travels from Saratoga to work at the refinery, and we have people all over the state that travel long distances for work, and I just don't support it at this time.
Don?
Thank you. Tolling I-80 is probably not a really good idea for the residents. People don't realize the Constitution forbids us from writing, call it special laws. You can't write a law that say all the non-resident trucks pay a toll and the residents don't have to pay anything. In Wyoming, that's unconstitutional. 13% of all the commercial traffic in the United States travels I-80 and Interstate 80 in Wyoming. That's a tremendous amount of travel there. I don't think the federal government would let us, frankly. I think that door closed years ago. So to set it up as a toll road, there are just too many difficulties. Frankly, if I go over to Saratoga, I don't want to have to get on the interstate myself and pay a toll here at exit 215 just to drive to Saratoga. There are probably other ways to do it, but that's not me. The use tax issue has come up. I think some people remember years ago, the taxing situation was called a ton mile. They pay, trucks especially paid per the mile, per the ton that they hauled, and that was removed in favor of other taxes. When the registration fees for all the vehicles increased a couple years ago, one of the benefits with that is, and you've seen them on the trucks, the little sticker that says IFTA, Interstate Fuel Tax Appropriation. The way that's calculated, by raising the license fees on heavy trucks, we also raised automatically the amount of money we get on that tax that they pay and the interstate component of it. So in some ways, we're getting a little more money now than we did then. So that was an improvement we made, especially with heavy trucks.
Okay, we had a question come in, and you've both spoken to this subject, and the question is regarding the state spending $1 billion plus on lands in Carbon Sweetwater and Uinta County during furloughs and cuts, which is, I believe, the Occidental purchase. But the second part of the question is your feelings regarding whether the counties that are currently receiving taxes on these lands, how would this purchase affect those counties that are receiving taxes currently? Go ahead.
Thank you, Ken. I think I understand the question. And the number that's been kicked around for the price of that land is $1.2 billion. The state can actually access that out of the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund because it's an investment for the state. That isn't a violation of the Constitution that set up the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund, because it would be an investment that is still liquid, it can be sold. So that's the land. The tax structure, again, as I said earlier, one of those things that has to be studied. What's the tax structure? How do you maintain that land? How do you care for it is a tremendous undertaking. Considering, for example, the state forestry department only has 8 people right now, how big of a department would you need to take care of 300,000 plus acres of land? I think it would be tremendous. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at. It's one of those downsides of what it does to the local communities. Although I do know of 2 pieces of land just north of town, I think we should still get one way or the other, so we build a new penitentiary sometime. So, and they've offered to sell it to the state prior to all of this. But, so that's it. We don't have an understanding of what we'd do with taxes. It'd probably be similar to what's done with state trust lands. But they belong to the state.
Ken, do you mind repeating that question?
Okay. And again, you've spoken to this regarding the state spending $1 billion on the Occidental purchase. What are your feelings regarding whether the counties that are receiving taxes now on these lands, how could it affect those counties?
Oh, absolutely. I think we need obviously to do a lot more research on the subject to know what the impact would be in each of those counties. I know, being on the city council for a long time, you make a small adjustment at the state level and boy, can it hurt the local government. So I think we just need we need a better understanding of how it's gonna impact Wyoming. Absolutely.
Okay, let's go back to Dawn. Okay, let's go back to Dawn, and what we're gonna do now is give each of you 2 minutes for closing. So we'll start with you, Dawn.
Okay, thank you, Ken, and I'd first like to thank Higher Ed for having us this evening. This is great. You always do a great job, and thank all the people who looked in and sent in questions. Those are great questions, and I appreciate all of them. As I've said, I am your representative. I think I work hard for the community. I've saved the community a lot of money. I've brought extra money in. And you understood my goals of a stable budget for the state, keeping our taxes low. expanding the economy based on STEM companies, some of which I've talked to and have tried to recruit. Some of them actually have been here to look at Rollins in the area, and I'm kind of proud of that. None of them have committed yet, and it takes a while. And I would say that I do have a vision for Rollins and Sinclair, and that's that they're the two great, wonderful, truly great communities in Wyoming. They really are, and frankly, when you look at our great outdoors, you couldn't find a better place in the country than right here. Thank you, and I would ask for your vote on election day.
First, I want to thank the higher ed. These are always a fun opportunity as well, and I want to thank everybody out there in Facebook land watching. I really love Rollins, and I love Sinclair, and the best part about where we live is, you know, we're 45 minutes from a lake, we're 45 minutes from the mountains, and I think we get a bad rap around the state. I really want to change that perception. Rollins is a great place to grow, it's a great place to live. I am definitely a proud person, and my family has deep roots here. I think that this is just the best place to live. I don't have the experience that Don has, and he has. I've learned a lot just sitting here with him tonight. I do, however, have a diverse background with lots of different pots of education and pots of community involvement. I just feel that we need to lead by example, and I'm here to put my name in the hat because I truly care about this state, and I truly care about diversifying the people in the legislature, and I really would like to serve Wyoming, and I appreciate your vote on election day.
Okay, I think does that conclude it? All right. Appreciate both of you coming. I appreciate your questions. I guess I have a question. Ahead of time, did they get these questions?
No.
No, okay, well, and I want you to know that I added a few things in there that I was kind of curious about. But I would like to say to everybody, I did it, Jacqueline's done it, Don has done it. You absolutely, the question about 18-year-olds, you absolutely need to get involved. You need to start by going to the polling place and voting, get on a board, run for office, be part of the solution. The young people are the key to what's going to happen next. So thank you all for coming in tonight.
Thank you both.